But the biggest thing with LLM, if we're talking about LLM and using them via API, is what data are we going to be feeding it? And that's where the security comes in. Is most people are experimenting and saying our AI is secure because we have proper API. We put in IP restrictions that you can only connect while, let's say, you VPN into the company. But most companies don't have proper labels or DLP set up for their data.
We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Will Klusovsky, aka Will Clue, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Another exciting episode. As always, do the like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. So you make sure you see these when they come out every week. And today, excited, I get to bring on a LinkedIn buddy of mine, Roman. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and why we care?
Hey, everyone. I'm Roman Kruglov. I've been in a IT, cybersecurity, help desk, anything technology-related industry for 30 years now, plus minus a year. I started like many in help desk, from being just a help desk analyst to running help desk for many years, and eventually made myself, got up to the cybersecurity, and now I'm a cybersecurity architect, and anything that comes with it, because when it comes to cybersecurity, it doesn't have a standard job description. So some companies call it engineers, some companies call it architects, some companies call it director of security, while the descriptions of the jobs are all the same that we all do day in and day out. So this is where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think most of us, especially anybody with double decades or more experience, we all kind of started in an IT help desk world at some point. I know I was doing WSUS updates and setting up Bez servers and people's email back in my early days as well.
Yes, sir. I remember setting up BlackBerry Server 4.0.
Yeah. And much like you said, with our titles and roles kind of being generalized and getting swamped with everything, AI kind of does the same thing. I think when we see people talking about it, they kind of just say AI and lump everything in together from a security perspective. And knowing that's a pet peeve of yours, we're going to talk about how AI is more than just LLMs. So let's get started right there, Roman, from your perspective, what grinds your gears about people just sort of associating it. So when AI is more than LLMs, what is it you see you want to see more people talk about and branch out? What is more than the LLM side?
So AI, and this is coming from just seeing posts everywhere. LinkedIn is notorious for it. Everybody says just AI, nothing else, just AI. Vendors reaching out and our product uses AI, just AI. No specifics, or even conversations sometimes we have internally in a company, and anybody else say, oh yeah, I'm using AI. Are you using machine learning? Are you using small language models? Are you running it on premise and then you have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested into the hardware because you need something, crazy amounts of video cards and everything else to run this? Are you talking about LLMs, just like Gemini, ChatGPT, and you're just using it via API connections, or you're just using the free versions? Vibe coding, and then you start getting into specifics like RAG models or data specific models that are trained only on your data. So I think as an industry, we need to start getting into specifying what AI we're talking about, because the risks will vary vastly between LLM that's in a public cloud and you're connecting to it via APIs versus something you're running on premise, a data specific model that you trained specifically in your model that's trained to provide specific answers. So when we talk about AI security, you can't lump it together. That's my kind of stance. And then I'm not even touching the agentic AI and agents and non-human identities that they can generate. But we keep saying, and by we I mean as an industry, just AI. AI
Right.
security. Are we secure? Are we using AI to analyze security, or are we securing AI? Just the term gets thrown around a lot.
Well, so let's dig in on that a little bit, because let's, like, for those of us in the industry, working in the security space, whether it's in a vendor or service provider, or even managing at day to day in the CISO world, what kind of, when we're talking to the business and they're talking about AI, what should we be asking, and what is different in talking about security for an LLM versus a RAG or an MCP or something else? Like, give me a couple of, or give us all a little bit of insight on kind of what we should care about within each of these sort of elements.
So if we're talking to the board and you actually posted about it today, the conversation you're supposed to have with the board and getting it down to their language, talking to the board, we need to ask them, what are they trying to accomplish, not what are we bringing. Ask them, what's the business goal, what are we trying to accomplish, and then you can decide between yourself and the IT department or technology developers, what is the proper AI we're going to use, LLM, SLM, are we going to run it on-prem, or they don't want to do investment in the hardware, then we'll connect via APIs to whatever their provider of choice, be it Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, whatever. Everybody has their preference. So if we're talking about bringing this to the board and to avoid the initial hardware investment and running it on-prem, unless you're highly regulated industry and you have to have it on-prem, most companies probably will use it in a public cloud, some shape or form, and then you start talking about APIs and all the security that comes with APIs. Make sure you're not using basic authentication. I mean, that's a given at this point.
Hopefully.
Rotating API keys for the encryption, making sure you're using the latest. But the biggest thing with LLM, if we're talking about LLM and using them via API, is what data are we going to be feeding it? And that's where the security comes in. Is most people are experimenting and saying our AI is secure because we have proper API. We put in IP restrictions that you can only connect while, let's say, you VPN into the company. But most companies don't have proper labels or DLP set up for their data. So AI will process anything you let it. So before you even go down the path of using AI, I think most companies need to invest into labels, into sensitivity labels, into DLP, and educate people how to mark their data, documents, databases, emails, chats, whether it's sensitive or not, because AI, good enough, will understand this. And if it's marked sensitive, it won't process it. So one of the biggest security risks that I see is that while we're securing the APIs and LLM or the connection or who has access to this, we're not securing anything with the data that we're feeding it. So that's one of the things. If you talk about models that you run specifically on your data, then it's different because it's inside, it's on-prem, it's the DSLM, you fed it data, whether it's whatever the business model is, let's say real estate, you feed it, you train it on lease information, on square footage. So when you provide it a question, it's trained specifically only on your data, and it only provides answers back based on the data you fed it. So there is no hallucinations because it doesn't know anything outside of the documents you gave it.
That's an interesting one because I've seen that implemented in a couple places and talked to people about that, like having, using AI specifically to simplify things, the knowledge that they have in their data lake or wherever they have it, right? But now, to me, that creates another crown jewel too, because before you had your intellectual property or whatever your sensitive data is, like this now creates another thing that you have to protect from unauthorized access or data exfiltration.
Correct. Access identity in general, whether it's human, non-human, agentic, is going to be the next battlefield in 2026, 2027. It's not going to be so much about securing the perimeter anymore. Everybody is still talking about firewalls and what's allowed, what's not. I think in the coming years, it's going to be all about identity.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, now, even today, like, and I kind of say it in a couple of these I've done and talking with people, like, identity is the new perimeter today, because it is, even if I go back and look at, decades ago, selling pen tests, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that we were going to get in. And today, everybody's kind of secured that perimeter up, and yeah, persistent threat can probably still find a way in, but it's we've done a better job of sort of securing that perimeter. But the identities and the fact that it's, from an attacker perspective, it's an easier way, because if you can just phish it or social engineer it out of somebody's hands, compromise it, then that's way easier, less barrier to entry.
Yeah, most attacks, big attacks that we saw this year that made waves on the news, whether it's a sales force, the sales loft, or many others, it was a compromised identity, whether it was the phishing, it was a human engineering, getting somebody tired, getting their credentials, and off you go. They didn't have to penetrate anything. They didn't have to hack anything. They just got somebody's credentials.
Yeah, identity is definitely the new world there. So let's dig in a little deeper below the board from the the security leadership management layer of, hey, IT's bringing me AI. They say they need to do it for, the finance department wants to use it for this, or HR wants to use it for this. Like, what are the things that we can be building into our business processes to make sure that we are securing this properly, and being, we all hate when security is seen as the roadblock, and the way to avoid that is to get into the process and be part of the early process. So kind of what's some guidance that we can take around that to make sure that when the business ultimately does bring in AI, whether it's LLM, MCP, whatever, RAG, pick your acronym, that we're protecting things and we're asking the right questions.
Building some templates. So when you're talking to the business, whether it's IT developers, at the moment, I think in most companies, it's the developers who are initiating this, bringing AI, trying to automate things. But we're starting to see it more even in the security itself, to automate vulnerabilities, patch management, how it reports, what's false positive, what's not false positive. We're starting to see it more and more. So first, I think it needs to come from an understanding, again, separating LLM versus SLM. So when we're talking to somebody came to security and asks us, we want to bring in this type of AI, we need to make sure there's an understanding what that AI is. Are we talking about connecting to an external source? Are we talking about staying within the perimeter walls of our company, be it in our private cloud, public cloud, your good old data center that's sitting in somebody's office? So that we have to have an understanding of what that is first. And then based on that, you can develop kind of like a template that if it's in the cloud, we follow our standard process of API, who will have access, IP restrictions if appropriate. If it's on-prem or private cloud, or it's like everybody has, a lot of companies are using M365 subscription, so it's contained within their own tenant, even though it's public, but it's still contained within their tenant. Is you have your permissions set up, identity starts playing a big role, who will have access to those environments, and more importantly, who has access to spin up new environments. You have to have the audit control in place. So when maybe working something with ServiceNow, following your standard ITIL processes with change control. When a new environment is being spin up or a new agent is being built, before it's built, it's documented. Even if it's a trial and we're doing it in development, often the development goes live before people had a chance to do anything. So even in development, even if it's a secluded environment, it should be documented, and documented from even basic points as what's the purpose, who will have access, what are we trying to accomplish, what data it will have, or what data are we going to be allowing it to access, or if it's a form that people are going to be chatting with, what type of information are we going to be exchanging. And then if possible, configuring it to not allow any private information. So your PCI compliance, your HIPAA compliance, your GDPR, all of those things, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, can be pre-defined, pre-programmed. So when somebody actually puts it in, it will block it or tell it, no, I can't provide that information. Granted, you can do prompt engineering and trick it by giving it the same information, but in a different format. But that's where the education comes in. And
yeah, I was gonna say education seems to be a big one for me, because I think about like elastic environments where people are spinning things up really quick just for a couple of hours to test something and pulling it down, right? They're not going to go through a change control process, but they need to be educated on how they do that. Use the gold disk, whatever it is, when you spin it up, not just randomly do one.
They might not need to go through change control process that like official with a cab and people meeting and approving, but maybe something in automated. You can have a change control process that's automated for things that you do day in and day out, as long as there's a record that this was created and this was destroyed and it had access to so and so and so.
Right.
So down the line, if that environment, for whatever reason, even if it was taken down, for whatever reason, it's still live, those things does happen, and something happened, you have a record, you have an audit trail, some form of trail. Otherwise, you can't just create and destroy without some kind of record. Even if it's in development and it's a playground, isolated from everything else, you still need to have guardrails. Everybody likes the word guardrails.
Yeah, it's a great word. I say, again, it's one of the key things for regardless of the type of AI you're putting in place, like have a governance, defined, have policies, guardrails, and educate the people on it. I'm curious though, like, do we have the adequate tooling today? I mean, I know we have audit, obviously we can audit things from the system, but like within AI, like what is the scariest thing to you because we don't have ways to monitor or protect certain activities?
So let's take Copilot as an example. Microsoft has it available to anyone with M365 tenant. I mean, yes, there are some costs involved, but the biggest concern that we have for anybody using Copilot in that regard, most companies have no clue how many public SharePoint sites they have, how many public teams they have, unless they have restrictions that people cannot create a new team and it has to go through a help desk, and help desk creates a team. But even then, not all teams, and teams are nothing more than a SharePoint sites, not always created private.
Yeah.
So the concern is now when you enable Copilot, it will crawl everything that's public. So let's say HR created a public SharePoint site. Any data that's on there that's not supposed to be seen, that people just regular search, you're not going to find it. SharePoint search is horrible.
Sure.
AI will find it. It will crawl everything. It does understand permissions, so it won't crawl anything you don't have permissions to. But public is public. And everybody has public SharePoint sites. It's just a leftover. That's how, because it's the default is not, Microsoft wants you to collaborate, so you have to be mindful when you're creating sites or teams to set it private and specify people who will have access to this.
Right. That's crazy to me too, because I've worked at a lot of places. I've worked with a lot of companies that have teams, and I've seen it implemented right maybe 1 or 2 times. Most people don't. Like, I've even seen ones that they do have it where not anybody can create a team, but all you have to do is send a help desk person a ticket and they create it. The only reason they're doing that isn't for access controls. They're doing it because they're worried about their storage. They don't want to be charged too much for it, taking up space, things like that. So again, it kind of goes back to, policies, guardrails, understanding what you're doing, and your people being well educated.
And going back to data labeling.
Yes.
Because again, in the example of Copilot, even if it's public, but it has a sensitivity label, it will understand it.
Right. Yeah.
So the visibility with AI, there is no specific tools that we're missing. AI just has the ability to amplify the weaknesses that we don't know. In security, we always say you can't secure what you don't know or you can't see, and AI just simply amplifies that.
That is profound. I love it. And it's an awesome note to end on, actually. Yeah. So Roman, that was great, man. I appreciate you coming on and chatting. Where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to?
They can find me on my LinkedIn, and I can put a link in the chat. I don't know if people will see
we'll drop it down in the description here.
Yeah. Or they can find me on my website, which is simply my name, romankruglov.me.
Outstanding. Appreciate your time, buddy.
Thanks, Will.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /WillClue or visit at willclue.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.